everybody. Welcome to another brand new episode of It's My House podcast. I am, of course, as always, your host, Mr. Chris Dees. And today, well, it's a man who needs no introduction. But what I will say is the word legend gets thrown around far too often, far too easily these days. But if you're talking about today's guest, it's the only appropriate, fitting way to describe him. So I will simply introduce him as the legendary Mr. Mike Chioda. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for joining me today. How are you today?
Good, Chris. How you doing today, man? Thanks for having me on the show over there in the UK. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Listen, like so many podcasts talk to wrestlers, just wrestlers, but I'm really interested in speaking to timekeepers, announcers, referees. It's always good to get a different perspective
of the business. That's true, from a different shot. You know, they always do like on ad-free shows, I'm on a podcast there. They call me the third man in the ring, so it's kind of like stuck with it. So the third man in the ring it's what it is.
Fits perfectly. Referees are just as important as the wrestlers.
Well, you know, I think there was only one guy that had a match without a referee. It was Pat Patterson like 50 years ago, but that was it. But yeah, you can't really do too much without a referee in the ring. That's for sure.
No, absolutely not. Right, I know you're a busy man, so I'm going to get right into it. Got a few things that I'm itching to ask you about. The first one, really recent memory. Obviously, you dedicated a long period of your life to being with WWE, WWF. There
35
for
years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hell of a long time to be in one job with one company for one employee, employer. Sorry. So when you left, was it a surprise for you? Was it a surprise that maybe they didn't have anything else for you to do, maybe in like a backstage role? Or?
Yeah, it was a shock. It was a shock. Like, you know, it was just a phone call in the middle of April last year, and it was just like, and that's it. And it was just like, wow, like, you know, I moved to Tampa from Houston. I'm from New Jersey, and was in Houston for about 13, 14 years. And I moved to Tampa to get closer to the PC Center and to do things. And it was great because it was like before the COVID, it was like WrestleMania is going to be in Tampa. The PC is down there. I was actually out in 2019 of August, had surgery in October of 2019 on my rotator cuff and bicep surgery at the same time. Had it done by the best, Dr. Dugas in Alabama. He does all the sports talents and all the wrestlers and everybody. And, you know, I get a phone call on April 15th. I thought it was going to be a pay cut, more or less. But it was just like, oh, see you later. And, you know, it's unfortunately in the business of wrestling with the WWE, it seems like, you know, when you're there for 30 years or plus, it's just you have no longevity after that. There is really not much in it. You can go into different areas, training referees. I could, you know, down to PC and so forth. You got like a lot of guys like X-Pac, Regal, Steven Regal, and a lot of guys training the wrestlers and stuff like that. And I thought I'd be a part of maybe doing something down in, you know, with the WWE. But Tony Chimmel, he was my time ring crew partner for 20 something years. And I refereed, he ring announced. We drove the trucks, drove all over the United States and Canada. We traveled all over the world and setting shows up. And, you know, especially me and Tony were like the head ring crew in 92 in Wembley Stadium in London. So, I mean, and he got cut and released too as well. Mark Gayton, timekeeper for many years, a referee, ring crew guy, did everything but wrestle. And he got released after 30 years. So it's kind of a shocker. It's like, wow, what is it? Like the 30-year mark? Is it a bad omen? You know, to where it's like, once you reach 30 years, man, your time's ticking. But, you know, unfortunately, we'll see. So, but if they call me back, do something, they call me back. If not, it's all good. It's been a great run, 35 years.
So you must have left on good terms then, if you'd be happy.
Yeah,
to go
I mean,
back.
I didn't leave on bad terms. I was out. I'd moved my family from Houston to Tampa. When I got to Tampa, I went to surgery in October. So, I mean, I was out for 6 months. I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't get no heat, you know. So, I mean, supposedly I didn't have any heat, but now it was just Tony Chimmel, myself, John D'Amico, and there was a couple other guys that got released after 30 plus years. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like we as fans, we put so much emphasis on, oh my God, I can't believe Samoa Joe's been released, or the Iconics have been released. People that have only really been there for, say, 4, 5, 6 years maybe, which is obviously sad. It's a loss, but you guys are just as you yourself are as much of my childhood, as big a part of my childhood as The Rock or Stone Cold or anybody is. So
I
it's,
appreciate that. Yeah.
it's just as big a loss to see you guys, and especially when you say so much loyalty and guys like Jerry Briscoe, so much loyalty.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of contact with
I mean,
Vince, or just a phone call from, is it
yeah, it was a phone
Tony?
call from TR, which Mark Crown not even there no more. He just got released about a month or two ago. So, I guess what comes around goes around. He was calling people, firing, hiring people left and right, and he got the phone call. But it was just yeah. I mean, Shane McMahon reached out to me. It was nice of him to reach out to me and stuff like that. We go way back, from the days where we were training Shane with the ring crew and stuff. Tony Chimel and I, and he used to run the roads with us for several months after college and between college and stuff when he was going to college. And it was nice to hear from Shane. But yeah, I really didn't hear it. And it's not like I didn't know if they think I'm going to go in there and screaming and hollering or anything like that. And I told Shane, tell the family, especially Vince, Linda, his wife, and Stephanie, and himself. Thank you for all the years and the support, and I appreciate it. It was and being loyal to the company as a referee is not being loyal is like, oh, I'm going to go to WCW, or I'm going to go to AEW, or I'm going to threaten them with it. I'm going to go somewhere else. Loyalty was basically just being there, doing your job, being on time, being there for every show. Loyalty was making sure the ring crew, got the ring there and set it up, and we never missed a spot on any show. Tony Chimel and I never missed a ring crew spot, and because I could definitely have some matches without a few talent that's at the show, but you can't have matches or a show without the ring. So the loyalty and hard work was that came in. That's where we played loyalty and hard work for the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. You mentioned AEW there. Obviously, you've done a little bit of work for AEW.
Yeah, a little bit of work for AEW and Cody
matches.
and stuff. And I don't know if Tony Khan's too high on referees. It's hard for me as a referee to see the show because the referee just stands there and they're acknowledging the tags. They're just counting the pinfalls. It's not like, okay, there's no disqualification. There's no 5 count on the ropes. There's no 10 count on a count out. They're just running all over the place, doing high spots and stuff like that. You'd like to see a little bit more of control where the referee has control of a match, and certain things I seen a couple weeks ago in AEW, and the referee took a bump. It was like, oh, a referee does play a large part. And Aubrey, like, she's doing a great job as far as a woman referee, and she's really showing women what a woman can do as a referee in there. She's doing a great job in there, and she's one of the best in the AEW.
Yeah, 100%. Would you be? Obviously, you've done those few matches there. I think like 3 or 4 matches, some pretty big matches as well, like you say,
Right.
Some Cody matches.
Yeah.
Are you looking to keep refereeing, or are you quite happy with where
No,
you are?
no, I like to keep refereeing, and there's a new beginning in South America with the Clones, with Eddie Colon and Primo Colon, and the Clones over there in Carlito and Puerto Rico, and hopefully the new beginning is starting in Latin American wrestling, so entertainment. So it's called LAWE. So it's hopefully in the next few months we're going to get that going. I was just in Puerto Rico a couple of weeks ago with the Clones and going over stuff, arenas and stuff in the ring and everything. I'll be doing production for them and revamping the whole ring, revamping stuff, and for TV production and training referees. And I'll be refereeing some main events over there as well.
Oh wow, well, that sounds pretty cool because they've got such a rich history within wrestling.
Yes.
So
yeah, it goes through generations of wrestling there with Carlos Colon and so forth back many years ago, and then Carlito and Primo and Epico and stuff like that. So, and which is Orlando Colon and Eddie Colon. So, I mean, they go back for many years of wrestling. They know what they're doing. And, and that's one thing I think the WWE has veered away from so many years is South America. Like, they really don't put their Latino wrestlers over at all. There was a short run where Andrade was getting a good push. Del Rio some years prior to that. And like Rey Mysterio, I don't think he gets the push he deserves on the way out at the end of his career. I mean, I think he should get a little more props in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of talented Hispanic and Puerto Rican
Oh,
and that heritage kind of wrestlers in the WWE ranks at the moment. I think if they are going to break into that, they could easily do an NXT show over there,
right,
how they've done India and how they've done,
right.
all these different regions. I think, yeah, it's such an untapped market, and Andrade would have been.
I mean, come on. He brings it when he gets in that ring. He brings everything, and just he just turns into a whole nother gear inside that ring. And hopefully be looking forward to working with him at LAWE. So that would be interesting working with him again and everything. But in Mexico and a lot of South America, there's so much talent that comes out of Mexico. Like I just named Rey Mysterio, Alberto Del Rio, and Andrade, and just so many other guys. And Kalisto, he's even a good worker. I love,
Yep.
and Hunico, and stuff like that. Sin Cara, and but so I mean, I'd like to see LAW and E, and we're going to start kicking off. It's a new beginning, and hopefully they kick it off right in South America.
Yeah, man, absolutely. One thing I'm always curious, because obviously growing up as a wrestling fan, we all want to be wrestlers. We've always got that dream of being a wrestler.
Yeah.
I've honestly, and this is not an insult to referees, I've never had any friends or met anybody who wanted to be a referee. So was that always your plan? Is that what got you into it in the first place?
That's a great question. Great question, Chris. Because when I was younger and started at 18, I used to do the business when I was 15 and 16 for Gorilla Monsoon's family. He owned a little ring outside the territory of South Jersey in New Jersey, outside of Philadelphia. And they had a territory where Joey Morella used to be. That was his son. Gorilla Monsoon's son was Joey Morella. And we used to do the ring crew when we were kids. And then, I went back into full time after I was 18. And Gorilla got me in the job back and stuff and got my foot back in the door. And I was ring crew with Tony Chimmel. And, I was always taking bumps, and he wanted me to be a referee and stuff. And Chief Jay Strombo actually said, look, he said, he used to call me Dynamite Kid. He said, Dynamite, go over there. He goes, I need you to get black pants, a blue shirt, a bow tie, and some black sneakers. I said, what? He goes, you're refereeing tomorrow. I'm tired of these commission referees, these old school commission referees. Like, they almost wouldn't even get down to count. They'd count with their foot. 1, 2, 3. It was like, so I said, oh, what? All right, Chief, no problem. Whatever Chief said and went. Going down the road, Gorilla, I'd be taking bumps, working out in the ring with the boys that would show up there early. Barry Horowitz, Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler, guys that would get there early. We'd take all kinds of bumps. And Gorilla pulls me aside and said, hey, I thought you wanted to be a referee. We talked about you being a referee. And Chief said, you started refereeing, and Joey Morella was helping me. The old school talent was helping. And he said, look, I don't want to see you in there trying to be a wrestler. He goes, I want you to do as a referee would do. If you want to take bumps as a referee, that's fine. Learn how to take bumps. He goes, longevity in the business is refereeing. And, I took the words wisdom, and I went, man, because he knew what he was talking about, Gorilla Monsoon. So I took those words, and I followed his wisdom, and it lasted 33 years of refereeing. I had 33 years under my belt, 31 on TV. I debuted in 89, and I actually refereed around 87, but it took you to pay dues for a couple of years to get to that TV spot. Because you had Tim White, you had Dave and Earl Hebner, and you had, Dangerous Danny Davis refereeing at the time. So, you had to pay dues, and then I made my debut in 89. And man, I go back and think about what Gorilla Monsoon said, and look how many wrestlers I've seen come and go. I've seen a lot of wrestlers come and go without their careers. And he always told me, a wrestler can have a good run for 4 or 5, 10 years, but after that, it's done. It's done and over. He goes, there's going to be very few guys that'll have a career like, Ric Flair or maybe Shawn Michaels and stuff like that have had longevity careers, but very few Undertaker. But referees, I followed what he had to say, and man, it was a great run. Traveled all over the world too.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. You've mentioned some great names in there, like Gorilla Monsoon and Ric Flair. What was it like as such a young guy spending time with people like Gorilla Monsoon, because I was born too young. I was born the year that you made your debut, so it was a great year. So I never really got to experience guys like Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. I've gone back and watched it, as a fan. But what was it like in that? What were they like to work with? Because we hear so many stories.
Great. Bobby the Brain was great, fantastic, always funny, always joking. Gorilla Monsoon and them two. Gorilla was a very serious person, and he joked around, but he was a very more stern and serious person and a trustworthy person. And he was just like pretty much all business. But when you seen Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan on those shows on Saturday mornings and stuff and commentating and going back and forth at it, and they were the best of friends and they were hilarious. And it was great to work with all that old school talent because they had so much knowledge of the business. And that's when you come in and you take their knowledge, you take their wisdom, you put it all together, and I had a very good run for 35 years. And it was, and looking back, when I was a kid and getting to travel to over 50 to 60 different countries, a lot of countries over and over and over and all throughout the UK and Ireland and everywhere, Scotland, here, Japan, Australia, China, and all over the place. And it's just what an experience it is to see how people live and entertain people for different cultures and, different ways of living. But our company provided entertainment for the kids and the families, which was awesome,
Absolutely. And to be a part of something that brings so much joy to so many people must just be such a great feeling as well.
Yeah. I mean, and sometimes there's heat when you're leaving, when your main man doesn't go over, so it was like, when the British Bulldog and Bret the Hitman Hart went at it in 92, when Joey Morella actually did that match and that went 45, 50 minutes. Man, I figured if Bulldog wasn't going over, this place was going to erupt. But anyway, Bret the Hitman Hart was a big fan in the UK as well,
Yeah.
But always got to put the hometown boy over.
Yeah, God, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. I was too young. I was like 3 years old, but I've been back and watched that match, and that's one of just my favorite matches from a UK fan point of view. That match means a lot to me, even though I wasn't there at the time. But you mentioned that match, such an iconic match, and I'm sure you must get asked this all the time on every podcast, every interview, just every chat you have with any person. You refereed for such a long time, so many important eras like the late 80s, the Attitude Era, the highs of that, the Ruthless Aggression Era, the PG and the Reality Era. If you could narrow it down to just a couple of matches, what are the matches that you're either most proud to have been a part of or matches that you enjoyed the most, and why do they spring to mind?
Yeah, I mean, to spring to mind is, I'd have to say number one is the shirt behind me. And then you got the man over there, The Rock. Behind me it says "What a Bash," where Hogan's pounding The Rock. There was a front newspaper. The one above is from the newspaper of the Examiner. That one was from the Sun, Toronto Sun. And that's the shirt from WrestleMania 2002 from Rock and Hogan. That's one of them that brought a big attention. I mean, it's just from back in the day. It's just, and I've done and I don't want to take it away from so many other matches, but with Hogan coming back and then coming into, facing a Rock, icon against icon, and the way the crowd just reacted to, the NWO, gimmick. And it was just phenomenal, man. It's just nothing else I experienced. And I have experienced some other probably louder times, but when you're talking like 60, 70,000 people in Toronto Skydome, it blew the roof off that place. And it was a big stadium. Second one comes with what's that?
Them looking at each other. Just when they're looking at each other those first few minutes.
Oh, the face-off. Yeah, the face-off was phenomenal. I mean, it was just, and then the big shove-off, and it was just the big Hulk up, and it was just like the crowd just went nuts. It was like, holy shit. So it was phenomenal to be a part of that match. I was glad I was a part of that match. There's a lot of other matches like, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit and just Eddie Guerrero and Benoit. And so many matches that stick out. There's, and I'm talking like technical matches, like The Rock and Hogan wasn't really a technical match. It was just more icon against icon. It wasn't coming off the top rope. It wasn't doing this. It was more of two big guys in the ring, and they really, the expectations were they had to really bring it. And you got to remember, like, that last match was Jericho and Triple H for the titles. And that match that should have been the last match of the night. And Jericho kept saying that night. This should be the last match. Other match comes to mind is the one with Big Show and Brock when the ring collapsed.
Yeah.
It was just a moment there. It wasn't a gruff, fantastic match. It was just that they executed the spot. They executed the ring to explode. My important part was just to sell on my ass, sitting there just looking around going, holy shit, like WTF, like what just happened. But that's, it's a memorable one there too. But there's so many other memorable matches too that come to mind, like Kurt Angle and Shane McMahon, putting Shane through that glass, man, several times, and he couldn't execute it the second time. And Vince is screaming, everybody's screaming, don't do it again, don't do it again. I'm telling Kurt, don't effing do it again, don't effing. I'm in his ear. And then he does it again. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, holy shit. Like, and I check on Shane, after the match, I go to Kurt, man, didn't you hear me? Don't fucking throw him through the thing. And he goes, no, I'm sorry, I'm deaf out of that ear, Chioda. And I'm like, oh, that's great. You mean the other ear didn't hear it either? I'm screaming. But there's so many other matches that, definitely come to mind. There's matches with Triple H and stuff like that. And, with certain guys. But yeah, a lot of really good matches.
Yeah, man, absolutely. To sort of like follow on from that, sort of like a second part to that question. I think as fans, as a fan myself, one of the things I love is seeing sort of like fan recorded footage from house shows and live shows where you see guys just mixing up and having fun and doing stupid stuff, and the referees getting involved. And it always makes me wonder, like, who, again, this is probably going to be a tough one because you've refereed so many matches and worked with so many guys, but who did you always look forward to working with? I always imagined that The Rock must have been great.
I mean, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, The Rock, old Triple H. I've always, those are some guys. Stone Cold Steve Austin. Let's not forget about Stone Cold. I mean, he was one of the greatest. I mean, he used to get that crowd going, and of course, anybody that would kick the shit out of your boss, Vince McMahon, you got to be over with. So, but Stone Cold was a great guy, easy to work with, and he just said, let's go out there and have fun, kid, and let's just tear it up, and we did, and John Cena, was another one who went out there and just, busted his ass for 10, 11, 12 years with the company and stuff. And, that's one thing I felt that was weird. Like when Rock came back after that, and John Cena had been holding the company up for 10 years. And Rock went, in 2002, Hogan passed the torch to Rock. Rock took that torch and he took it to Hollywood, and then after he took that torch to Hollywood, then he came back after several years, faced John Cena. Then he went over on John Cena. It was like, there was a little bit of like, and they're like, who are we going to bury? Are we going to bury The Rock that's in Hollywood doing his thing and what he's accomplished in this business? And it was kind of like, I was really like wondering, okay, when I get this finished, who's going over here? And the first time, of course, Rock went over, and then John Cena got the receipt back, the next year.
Yeah, it was a really confusing time to be a fan, that, especially the fact that he came back and they just announced the match like straight away.
Yeah.
Like for nearly a year in advance. That was a really weird moment. Yeah,
they did. I mean, it was just, like in Miami. I mean, The Rock was wrestling. I believe the first one was in Miami. So it was in Miami. It was, big match, and Rock came back. He was doing very well. I mean, look where The Rock is now. He's even, he's even 10 times
the biggest
better.
star in the world.
He is. He's the biggest star in the world. And where did he come from? Wrestling, professional wrestling business, and it just goes to show that professional wrestlers could do other things too as well.
The great thing about The Rock is, well, maybe not the great thing, but so many kids and teenagers now don't even realize that he was a wrestler. That's how much he has just sort of catapulted and gone into the stratosphere of being a celebrity. He is just
unless they go to the network or something, or a Peacock, whatever it's called, and they search back then, then they could see. And that's the great thing about the network or Peacock. You just just go on that, boom, and just get all the matches from way back in the day, which is pretty cool.
educate yourself at just a moment's
it's a
notice.
complete library of many years of wrestling, so which is pretty cool.
You mentioned just a couple of minutes ago how easy some of these guys were to work with, and that's another thing I've always wondered about referees. How involved in the planning and the preparation and the choreography of a match are you? Do you need to know all of the spots? Or
yes, you need to know everything, because sometimes a wrestler will forget a spot, and he'll say, "Hey, what's going on next? What are we doing next?" But then, like back in the day, they used to call a lot of the spots in the ring. So when they locked up, they would call a spot. When they grabbed the hold, headlock, or so forth, they'd call a spot. Go into the next spot. Go into, there was a lot more in this communication between the two, especially when wrestlers had long hair. It was easy to communicate because you could talk with your hair over your face and all that other stuff. But and important these days now that they don't want to, they don't want to see that. They want to see facial, because your face sells everything. So they want to see your face selling on TV. And so it's referee has a big spot now. I mean, he has to know everything as far as the finish, the false finishes, going into the heat, coming back, going into commercial, coming back at a commercial, going off the air. And especially when you're going off the air at the end of a show, a Monday Night Raw or a SmackDown or anything, or a pay-per-view, it's very important that you hit your time cues, because before the network, it was like USA would cut you right off, or the pay-per-view would cut you right off. And if you didn't get that finish in before the end of the pay-per-view, you're in up shit's creek.
First person you go backstage and see is Vince. I can't imagine Vince was very happy when that happened.
Well, that becomes the heat on the referee, where you give him the cues, where you telling him, and sometimes you're in there screaming, "Let's go! We gotta effing go! 30 seconds!" So, sometimes it gets a little heated in there.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I can imagine. I wouldn't want I wouldn't want Vince McMahon screaming down my ear at all.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
What's it like in terms of like looking after the wrestlers? Because just a moment's notice, we've seen so many freak accidents and so many freak injuries happen. Well, how do you know the difference between just good selling and somebody being really hurt?
Easy, like when a concussion protocol, if that's in the play there, their eyes get teary, they start losing they just get a little drowsy and weary, and they're stumbling a little bit. And when you see their tears in the eyes and the eyes are glassy, that's kind of a sign. When somebody breaks a bone, they tell you right away, "I blew my knee out, I blew my ankle out," and you just got to stop the match and stuff like that. And that's where you see a lot of the X signs. So if you see that X sign, they rarely do that X sign just for a storyline, because then that X sign it's a real the truth that somebody's hurt inside the ring.
Yeah.
So I mean, you just have to prepare, and just some guys get hurt and they say, "Okay, I can continue. I'll definitely." But if you're in a concussion protocol, you got to stop the match, because you can keep going on, but they don't even remember. So, and you're worried about breaking necks and so forth, and head damage.
Especially after as much as we don't like to talk about it, things like Chris Benoit and what happened there must be so much concern all the time now. How does that disrupt the flow of a show? Is that something that's always prepared for?
Well, we try to prepare for that, but it's usually when it does happen, it does disrupt. It does break up the flow of the match, of course, but it's real. I mean, it's real. I mean, you can't really knock it if somebody gets hurt, and it's real. I mean, there's stoppage in plays in European football, American football, hockey, everything. Sometimes when a player's hurt, it's just done, stop, take care of that situation. And like in professional football here in the United States, they're taking the concussion protocol very serious anymore. Very serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move away from that sort of like doom and gloom side of wrestling. One of the things that I've always loved as a fan, and I think most fans do, is the whole fantasy booking side of things, or things like, if you could be in attendance for any match in history, what match would it be, where and why? You've refereed thousands of matches.
Right.
So were there any matches that you've not refereed where you would have loved to have been in that position, been the third man?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some. I remember Charles Robinson had the Undertaker Shawn Michaels match the first time they met, and that was fantastic. Do I look back and say, wow, Like after you've seen what kind of match they had, I sit there and go, wow, I wish I was part of that match, Probably, I think Sting and Flair, when they got together years ago, that was probably one of them, but I wasn't, of course, working for WCW or anything like that. But there's a few matches that I say, hey, I wish I'd be a part of and stuff like that. No, those two stand out. I mean, definitely Undertaker, Shawn Michaels stands out.
Yeah, just to say that you were a part of it. I mean,
Right.
You must be happy for your colleagues to be
And
a part of it.
And that's exactly, I was happy to Charles that he was a part of it, and he's a very experienced referee, one of the best in the business as well. And I was glad he was a part of it. But yeah, that's one match, with Undertaker and Shawn. I said, damn, I wish I had that match.
Speaking of your fellow referees and the friendships and the bonds that you must create there, one thing I've always wondered about is I always hear rumblings of like a referees union sort of thing, like not a literal union, but we hear about it in soccer as well, in UK European football, where sort of like referees and goalkeepers have goalkeepers unions where they just sort of all get together and talk about what's going on. Is there anything like that with referees? Do you spend time together backstage? Have you got your own locker room? Or
we spend together. We spent some time talking outside the ring areas all day in the arena, because you're there from like noon to like midnight. So I mean, and then you'll sit back and you'll talk, and it's definitely not a union, that's for sure. And but you always had your favorite referees that you like to hang out with and so forth, and it's stuff like that. In my case, I used to travel more with the wrestlers all the time than the referees.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next. Actually, like, did you ever spend much time with the wrestlers backstage, or did everybody sort of like have cliques and
you had a clique. You had your own little clique and stuff, and certain guys you like to travel with and share a hotel room with and travel with all the time and get from town to town. And there's always a certain group of guys that you'd like to hang out with and travel on down the road. And unfortunately, it's been with quite a few wrestlers and doing the business over 3 decades.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Right, so one thing that I want to ask before I let you go, because this has been brilliant, and thank you so much for joining me. But one thing that I always wanted to ask about was the one match that you had in 2001 alongside Chris Jericho, and you got the pin, you got to drop the people's elbow.
Yeah.
What was that like? How did that come about? Was that something
you wanted
to do? Or?
I just walked in the building that day, I remember we were doing ring crew, and I was doing stuff, and the writers and stuff came up to me and said, hey, you have a match tonight. I said, oh, cool. Who? I'm thinking I'm going to referee. And they're like, oh, you're going to be wrestling with Chris Jericho and The Rock, and it'll be a 6-man tag with the Dudleys and Nick Patrick. I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't have any wrestling gear or anything on me, and they're like, oh no, you're going to do it in your referee outfit. Oh shit, this ought to be interesting. I'm like, but it was great to be a part of that, man. I mean, I wrestled there with 2 icons in the business. Tim White actually had the match. It was fun. And it just, if you look at Chris Jericho from 2001, 2002, he was main event in the Sky Dome with Triple H, to where he's at now in AEW, to see where The Rock was from back then all the way to there. I mean, I got to do a tag match I don't think any other referee has ever done in the professional business, with 2 icons in the business, Y2J, Chris Jericho, and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. So it was definitely awesome to be a part of that match, and thank God it went over.
When you found out, were you nervous about doing it when you found out?
Yeah, of course. I didn't want to screw that freaking people's elbow up. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, if I make it look that stupid, I know I was going to make it look great, which I didn't, but I figured I had to try and do my best. And I'm thinking, if I really screw this shit up, I'm going to be like, but for what it was worth, it was great, man. It was great to be a part of that. Like I said, thanks Nick Patrick for letting me go over. But it was a good time to be a part of that with the Dudleys and everything.
Yeah, really cool moment, really unexpected. I don't think anybody saw that coming, even you, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it.
What I was going to ask as well, obviously you've been gone now for what's it been? Just over a year, about a year and a
Yeah.
few months since
Yep.
being let go of.
Yeah, I was out on surgeries too for a while. So actually the company stopped paying me in like late August, September. So they stopped paying me last year in like August, September. So I was kind of released after that point, because after they stopped paying me, then I was able to do something else.
So many backstage talents, so many wrestlers who leave the business become so often so quickly disenchanted by the industry and by the business. I even spoke to, without naming any names, I spoke to a wrestler yesterday to see if they wanted to come on the show, and they very honestly said that they just don't care about wrestling anymore. Are
Yeah.
you put off at all after your exit? Or are
Um,
you still keeping up with how things are
I'm still
going?
keeping up. I'm still watching it here and there. I'm not, to be honest with you, when I worked it for so many years, I didn't watch it every night either. I mean,
Yeah.
I would, I'd watch certain matches that I did and certain other matches that I knew were going to be good. And be honest with you, before AEW came around, WWE was the only town, only company in business pretty strong. But I'd go back and watch certain of my matches, back in the day. But nowadays I watch it because I like to see what AEW is doing. And it's a little hard as a referee to see what they're doing, because they're just running all over the referees, not applying really too many of the rules and stuff like that. So it's a little hard to see, like, when they're just acknowledging the tag and the false finishes and the counts, and not enforcing the 5 counts out of the corners or against the ropes or the 10 counts, but it's just hard to watch as a referee standpoint, because like the referees are just getting buried. But I watch WWE because I know a lot of the guys in the business still, and I like to see upcoming talent. Like I said, I was a little disappointed that the company didn't put me somewhere else, but I'm not hating the game. This player doesn't hate the game, So I mean, it is what it is, and hopefully one door closes and another one opens up. So we'll see.
Is it hard for you to sort of watch it now as a fan, or do you still see it through a referee's eyes? Even if the referee in the ring's doing a good job, are you still looking out for what they're doing, or can you separate the two now?
No, I could separate the two. I can see what the referee's doing. I can tell it's a great match. I can tell almost what's coming up to be. It's almost like, if I was betting on wrestling, I'd probably be winning every night. So, but it's good to see some of the talent do their thing. It's like, Roman Reigns and Paulie, man, they got it going. And I think Paulie was the missing piece of the puzzle of Roman Reigns to really become that good top heel, And it's good to see they finally got them two clicking after Brock left and Paulie released, to Roman. That was a good move there. So
absolutely. Like you say, breathe new life into him.
Yeah, I mean, I still like to see Seth Rollins work. He's a great talent. So many guys, and Rey Mysterio and so forth. But I can still watch it. I mean, no, do I, make sure I plan my night around it to sit home and watch wrestling? No, because I can always tape it. But no, but I still like to see what's going on. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It makes me happy to know that you're still a fan just as much as we are, even after obviously being in the company. You could have been jaded by it all, but no, it's lovely to know that you're not.
I don't hate the players. I hate the game sometimes and the politics, but I don't hate the players.
Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So much, man. Where before you go, can you let the viewers know where they can find you on social media, where they can find the podcast?
I got a Twitter account at MJC at Chioda, Chioda, and I have some wrestling, some t-shirts and some designs out on Pro Wrestling Tees.com, and I got some new designs. A Third Man in the Ring design just came out, and some shirts there, and I'll be back in Puerto Rico in a couple of weeks, so just keep an eye out for LAWE, Latin American Wrestling Entertainment.
And I take it you'll be posting about that on your Twitter account? And
sure will.
Brilliant. I'll make sure to
keep
an eye out for that.
Puerto Rico.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for watching. As usual, you know where to find me. It's down here somewhere. All the links are in my bio on Twitter. You can find us on all podcast platforms and on YouTube especially. And that's it from me today. Again, Mike, thank you so much. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, mate. And I hope everybody stays safe in England. All right.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
All right,
You too.
take care, man. All right, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, guys.
All right. Cheers.